What is up, guys? My name is Ivo, and today we are going to review every Prenats 2 team in 45 seconds or less. Alright, just a few quick disclaimers, guys. I am going for each team to be reviewed in 45 seconds or less. This might mean you don't get a mention. If that's the case, get over yourself. Who cares? If I say something good about you, fantastic. I think you did a really good job. If I have any criticisms, it's not necessarily because I think you're a bad player. I just think you could have played a certain way, better. Please note that the stats that I'm using are indicative only and not official. I think I covered everything. Alright, without further ado, let's begin. In 15th spot, we've got I'd Tag That. Stats should be just there. These guys hovered around the bottom 2 or 3 for the whole comp, and that was probably to be expected. When you've got a mixed team with no all-star caliber player, it's a real struggle in these pre-nats where the competition's only getting harder. It's not all bad news though. All the players on this team managed to perform individually reasonably well, with not a single tag ratio dropping below 80%. This indicates that individual ability is there, but coordination and executing attack and defenses is what let this team down. And a mixed team shouldn't even care about that sort of stuff, really. Props to Doug for having a great score, maintaining a good tag ratio. And despite coming last, I don't think this team's upset with the result. Next team, guys, number 14, the Cowboys, and a cowgirl. I was a bit surprised to see this team fall this low, given that they're not really a mixed team, and a lot of these players did participate in Prenats 1. They started round robin really slowly, and despite having a reasonable cascade, they just couldn't quite pull themselves out of the bottom 2. Interestingly enough, all the players on this team, except for one, had a positive tag ratio, and this didn't seem to help translate into wins for them. This says to me that the high tag ratio, positional style of WA teams may not favour the new Sunshine Coast Arena. Gigantor is obviously still adjusting to playing on a zone system. My man Mushu performed well. He averaged 9k and maintained 120% tag ratio for the tournament. All in all though, I think this team will be a little bit disappointed with their result. Next team, in 13th place overall, our friends from the south, Albury Anarchy plus the Plebs. These guys finished a round robin in dead last, and over the course of the Cascade and final system managed to climb 2 positions. This mixed bag of Albury A and B were consistently able to beat up on the 2 teams that finished below them, but did not take a single game off the teams above them on the ladder. They played the Cowboys 5 times in total, winning 4 of the matchups. Tag ratios on this team were not as impressive as the Cowboys, but the results indicate that this team was more willing to be aggressive and take risks, which ultimately paid off. Firebird came out to play with the highest average score and tag ratio we've seen so far. To take the next step, the other players on this team need to step up and be more involved. And this is just as much on the captain as it is on them. It's just really hard to win a team game with less than 150 or 160 tags per team. It's a lot easier to get those extra tags from everyone else on the team than it is to ask your top guy to go out and consistently bring 60 to 70 tags a game. Alrighty, number 12, Brisbane Renegades. They're our first local team, and in classic Renegade fashion, there's only 800 points separating the top 4 scorers. My first impression was that the Renegades underperformed, but when I looked at the teams who placed just above them, it's actually really hard to say that. I think they placed about appropriately, but they do have the potential to upset some of those teams above them. And they did that at least once, beating Cheese and Quackers in one game. On any given day, or any given competition, it's impossible to tell who the main scorer is going to be, or who's going to be playing what roles. This sounds great in theory, but in practice, I think with the Gades you get a lot of players who are jack of all trades and master of none. And I believe that they'd benefit from having a little bit more identity and purpose. Bread and Gravy were the top 2 scorers for this competition, but to be honest, it wouldn't surprise anyone if they were the bottom 2 scorers. That's just how the Renegades are. I personally think that having slightly more clearly defined roles and go-to people would help them. Cougar did have a disappointing performance, and I say that especially because I know he's capable of much more. Now this could be due to the position that he was played in the maze, but at the end of the day, he would be capable of averaging 9 to 10k for this team, and I don't see anyone else doing that. Next team, in 11th spot, we have the Sunshine Coast Submarines. This is really our first true home team. These guys started really strong, finishing the round robin in 7th, and progressively dropped down throughout the Cascade and finals, going out in straight sets. This result is really typical of a lower experience home team in any tournament. As expected from any home team, tag ratios were right up there. Ghibli had really strong overall stats, but looking into the game by game, I did see a tendency for her to get denied unnecessarily. She was the second most one-shot denied player of the whole tournament. Even though two-shot denials are more costly, one-shot denials are typically more a result of bad decision making. Strong pack points and tag ratios from Jipley says the skill is there. It's just time to work on some of those decision making things. Come Nationals, I would expect to see a similar trend with this team. They'll start strong in round robin, drop in Cascade 1, climb in Cascade 2, and then eventually drop off in the finals. Alright guys, next up is 10th place CWB. I just want to start by saying, you know, pre-nuts is getting nuts when this team comes 10th and it's only a slight underperformance. 3 players from this team are coming from the reigning runner-ups in 1-up. The other 2 players are the Rookie of the Year and Gustus, who we all know is a great player. So you might ask, well, if this team's got so many good players, how come they only came 10th? Well, the 2 teams above them are the local A team and 3/5 of the Wolfpack. I mean, what are you going to do? Looking at the game by game, I noticed that these guys did a lot of denying and they got denied a lot, which indicates a pretty unstructured style of play. Huge props, of course, go to Daddy for being the leading scorer. I think Daddy has a massive chance of being the highest scoring player at ZLTAC 2019. The bulk of this team is made up of 1-up players. Should 1-up be worried after underperforming a little bit at pre-nats? I don't think so. They're still going to be contenders. Next up in 9th place, we've got half of the Wolfpack playing with interstate players and Scoot. And what? Wax, Lakeo and Whamfox didn't make the finals at pre-nats? I know, I'm just as surprised as everyone else. But do I think they care? No. Rumor has it that Wax was captaining the team for the competition, which I think is actually a really, really good decision for the Wolfpack in general. Not necessarily for Wax to captain them, but to give him some experience in the role, which I think will develop him further within his own role on the Wolfpack. But still, even with someone who doesn't typically like to captain running the team, I was surprised to see that this team couldn't just muscle their way a few spots higher. Wax and Lakeo still smashed. Whamfox also remained consistent and reliable as ever. I do want to point out that Wax only missed 4 bases for the whole competition and only lost 7 shots into bases for the whole thing. That is incredible. I am also certain that the New South Wales boys had a blast playing with reigning champs. Okay, number 8, Blue Steel. All I can say is hashtag just Blue Steel things. 2 years ago, Blue Steel came 3rd overall in ZLTAC, and now they're in the middle of the pack of their own pre-nats. I mean, I swear, Blue Steel's the only team that could take a game off the Brisbane Beavers, but then lose a game to the Submarines. It is almost impossible to predict this team, and their performance fluctuates wildly. They are definitely capable of going on huge runs and having perfect, 6 from 6 cascades as we've seen in the past. But they're just as capable of losing games that they really can't afford to wooden spoon contenders. The talent is obviously there, but putting it together sort of only seems to happen half the time. Ultimately, I do believe this team is going to regret dropping Robo though. Big Daddy Mopar carried the scoring and the tag ratio, and I would expect the same from him come Nationals. And surprisingly, he wasn't even the most denied player on his team. Blue Steel still have to bring GMI and Snake back into the lineup, so this result isn't necessarily indicative of what their performance at Nationals will be like. Blue Steel are going to finish anywhere from the finals down as low as 14th or 15th, who knows. And in 7th place, the team that was the most difficult to do commentary for, the Minion Minotaurs. I'm just going to call them Adelaide Apex. For real though, these guys came out to play. I am convinced that if Apex could find a way to sign Meerkat, then they would become Nationals contenders, absolutely. The numbers don't really show it, but Chutch has been an absolute powerhouse the last few pre-nats, and she's definitely earned her spot on the top Adelaide team. I do also want to point out that Benson performed extremely well, given that on paper he's probably the weakest player on the team. Spack Attack was a defensive beast, leading the team in denials. He denied 16 shots over 13 games. That's unbelievable. And Bakura was just Bakura, leading the team in both average score and tag ratio by a wide margin. These guys definitely exceeded expectations and should be stoked with the results that they got. Adding Memeless and Fuggin to the mix will still make them very, very competitive come Nationals. 6th place, we've got Cheese and Quackers. So, what happens when the Maroons and Blue Steel have a baby? You get Cheese and Quackers. Literally everyone on this team has either played for Blue Steel or the Maroons or both, or is literally the son of Mopar. I think these guys performed pretty well given that it was their first real stint playing together. I was super surprised to see Dark Passion being the lowest scoring player on the team though. Like, I would expect him to be the top scoring or at least 2nd highest scoring player. Beefy's tag ratio has taken a slight hit while he adjusts to life outside of last line for the Maroons, but his improved score ratio makes up for this. Actually, fun fact, Beefy finished pre-nationals with a perfect 100% tag ratio and a perfect 100% score ratio. So congratulations to Beefy for being the most average player. Our Sunny Coast locals, Robo, Raven and Dodged performed exceptionally well. Young Dodge amazed everyone in the competition, finishing on 142% tag ratio overall. I think that the keys for this team's success come nationals is finding a way to get Dark Passion more involved and scoring more, and how young players Dodge and Alex, who didn't play in the competition, adjust to a major tournament. 5th place, Arm and Iraq. Arm and Iraq get the award from me for the highest achievers of the competition. Husky also has to be the MVP as far as I'm concerned for the whole comp. Just look at the teams that these guys have just beaten, and they've only got one player who you would expect to see in the side event finals. These guys smashed it. They dominated, especially for a team that is a mixed team with 4 different states represented. Volley had a great defensive tournament, denying 15 shots in total, and he only lost 7. That's a great ratio. I don't know what else to say. These guys just blew me away. They performed so well. I don't have many criticisms of them, so let's move on. All right, 4th place, Grubs, Bubs, Scrubs, Cubs, Club, Tub, Bub. Since we're on the topic of overachievers, how about these guys? They only dropped 2 games in the whole competition to non-finalists. I might even have to rethink my vote on highest achievers. And the craziest thing of all is they did it without burdening their local Wolfpack member and asking them to do all the work. Grub came 3rd in scoring and tag ratio for the team. Gooby and especially Gaza just went beast mode. Gaza was one of the highest scoring players in the whole competition, which makes me wonder what we can expect from him playing on the Grizzlies in March. Like, realistically, this team could have come 12th or 13th and we would have gone, yeah, that's fair enough. The teams above them are really good. But they didn't. And it's also worth mentioning that they missed out on the finals by 300 points. So they very easily could have, like, maybe even won the thing. Crazy. Oof. Big boys now, we are down to the finalists. In 3rd place, we have the Diet Cobras. So for the whole competition, it looked like spots 1 and 2 were locked up. But that 3rd spot in the finals was going to be hotly contested between the Diet Cobras and the last 4 teams that we mentioned. A mixed team who shared the scoring load a little bit. Every single player on this team scored 10k at least twice. Moldy was the most denied player of the whole competition, but that didn't stop him from amassing huge scores and ultimately helping the team make the finals. And huge props go to our young gun Spider for consecutive 10k games in the Ascension to push this team into the finals. PS, Spider had the best tag ratio in the whole competition. Unreal. Guy's going to be an absolute weapon at nationals. Oof. All right, next up, number 2, the Spartans from Sunshine Coast. We're finally down to the top 2. I think everyone who attended the comp knew that spots 1 and 2 were going to be filled by the 2 teams we're about to talk about. And who was going to come out on top, the former captain of the Maroons or the former captain of the Maroons? Both teams played really, really well. Spartans fell just short on the final day due to what I would put down as inexperience and just a little bit of lack of depth over the team that ended up winning. But being a home team, being a young team, these guys have a lot of room for improvement, so you can definitely expect them to be much better come nationals. Magcans was his usual dominant self, averaging over 10k and maintaining 125% tag ratio. And he also managed to deny more players than he got denied, which is a huge ask for your main attacker and your base cracker. Stalker and Potato were the next 2 most talented and experienced players, followed by Panda and Fuzzy Dragon, who shored things up from the back. It is worth pointing out though that Penguin had one of the highest tag ratios of the whole competition. Expect these guys to be dominant again at nationals. Mad Cans is an incredible captain and he's definitely capable of taking some scrubs through to the grand final. The big question for them is how much better can they get in 6 months? Okay, lucky last, and in 1st place we have the Brisbane Beavers. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. The newly formed Brisbane Beavers team won pre-nuts. It wasn't a surprise to too many people. Butzer has handed the captaincy over to Ninja, who did a fantastic job leading Vanquish to a very, very respectable 7th place at Albury. You've got Vindicare, who has more national championships than anyone else. You've got Ninja, fresh off a solos championship. You've got Link, who's been affectionately dubbed as Wax Jr., and rightfully so. And finally, young Jimmy, a reasonably unknown player who's just started playing competitively in the last few years. These guys dominated from the start, and I think anything less than a win was going to be a disappointing result for them. They played a super controlled game style, and were one of the least denied teams in the whole comp. Currently, these guys, alongside with the Sunshine Coast Spartans, are the biggest threats to the Wolfpack for Sunshine Coast Nationals next year in March. And I think the keys for this team's success is going to be around how quickly young Jimmy can assimilate into the top 4, top 5 teams in the competition. And it's Ninja's first time captaining an elite level team, so we'll see how that goes. that is it from me today, guys. Thank you so much if you watched all the way through. I want to thank everyone again who sponsored me, helped me set up this channel. Looking forward to releasing at least one video a month, so you can definitely expect to see one just before Christmas. Huge thanks to Top End Laser Sports Association for being major sponsors of the show. And also to Laser Sports New Zealand for being our other major sponsor. My name is Ivo. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, get good.